People living close to where a young man was stabbed to death over the weekend say they've been saying for months that more police are needed in the area. The 22-year-old died in Kingston after a fight in the early hours of Sunday morning. Our correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Most recent killings have been confined to inner city postcodes, but London's latest murder was in Kingston upon Thames. This level of violence is rare in Kingston, the police insisted, but it still ended with another statistic to add to the growing toll of murdered Londoners. According to the police, the victim was among a group of around 10 people who were arguing or fighting in the street in the early hours of yesterday morning. At the moment, the motive for the murder is unclear, but it appears to follow a depressingly familiar pattern. Once again, police were called to a large council estate. Once again, residents spoke of persistent drug dealing on their doorsteps. Brian and Sheila Preston are just one couple whose lives have been ruined by the activities of criminals on the Cambridge Gardens estate.
You've had drug dealers dealing here as you go in where we live.
In the lobby?
Lobby, they're dealing. And we called the police, nothing's done. And it takes now to someone to be stabbed, probably something could be done.
You can see they're exchanging money for drugs and what have you. I mean, we're not stupid, we see it. They try and hide it, but we know it's going on.
We've been here 5 years. The first couple of years we've moved here was lovely, wasn't it? But now it's terrible.
There appeared to be just one CCTV camera watching the flats. Kingston Council declined our request to talk about what's happening here. Instead, it issued a brief statement saying reports of antisocial behaviour and crime are reported to the police. The police said 3 people had been arrested. Simon Harris, ITV News, Kingston.
Police are now treating a fire which killed a 7-year-old boy in Deptford overnight as murder. Joel Urie's mother jumped from the first-floor window to escape from their home, but Joel was unable to get out. His family said he had wanted to be a firefighter when he grew up. Well, our correspondent Simon Harris is in Deptford tonight. Simon.
Charlene, it's too early to say for sure that a 7-year-old boy is the latest victim of London's murderous crime wave, but it certainly looks that way tonight. The local police commander here in Lewisham said she believes the fire which killed Joel Urie was started deliberately. Scorch marks and melted plastic give some idea of the inferno at the front door. There was no escape. The only way out was through the upstairs windows. Effie Urie and her daughter Sarah jumped. Both were injured but alive. But Effie's 7-year-old son Joel was trapped. By the time firefighters reached him, it was too late.
I looked out my window, this was around 3:30, and the whole front of the house was engulfed in flames.
I just woke up to screams and I thought that someone must have been being attacked, and opened up the front door and there were just flames coming through. So we started yelling and knocking on everyone's door and went out the back way.
As forensic science investigators scoured the blackened remains for any clues, Joel's father, who lives nearby, arrived at the police cordon to remember his son.
Very joyful, nice-looking boy, you know. It's terrible. Can't really, the pain, we can never forget that, to be honest.
Can you think of anyone or why anyone would want to do this to them?
To be honest with you, I don't really know. I can't really figure any suspicion or anything. I can't really even say nothing about it right now.
Neighbours on the Deptford Council estate told me this was a community where everyone looks out for each other, and the death of a 7-year-old boy they all knew has hit them hard.
This is terrible. My dreaming. Joel is the same class with my son. In the same class.
All of us around here, it's going to be an impact on the whole community. The kids going to hurt as well.
My kids are like, I don't even know how to, right now they're traumatized basically. You know what I mean? I just managed to put them back to sleep. They haven't slept properly. They're worried about the boy, and I haven't said anything to them yet, so it's going to be really devastating.
It took the fire brigade almost an hour and a half to bring the ferocious blaze under control. It's not hard to see why the police quickly concluded the fire was suspicious. Within hours, it officially became an arson investigation. And if it was arson, that means Joel's death was murder.
An innocent 7-year-old boy has lost his life in what should have been the safest place for him, his home. The pain this family must be enduring at this difficult time is hard to imagine.
Joel's family say he talked of one day being a firefighter. This is him dressing up at school. Tonight, the house where he lived with his family is a crime scene. Charlene, what the police don't yet know is why anyone would want to set fire to Joel's house. But tonight, as the murder investigation gets underway, detectives are asking the public for help from anyone who may have seen anything suspicious in or around Adolphus Road in the early hours of this morning, or from anyone who knows anything whose conscience may be touched by the death of a 7-year-old boy.
OK, Simon, thank you very much. Detectives investigating the murder of a 7-year-old boy in a house fire are looking at possible links to gangs. Joel Urey died in his home in Deptford in the early hours of yesterday morning. His mother and sister managed to escape, but by the time firefighters reached him, Joel couldn't be saved. A makeshift memorial has been created outside the house with a reminder of just how young London's latest victim of crime is. Simon Harris has the latest.
When a 7-year-old boy dies, it is often his young friends who struggle the hardest to understand why. Earth Yusuf knew Joel Urey well. Today, with her mum, she left flowers and a message.
It was very important because it was my friend that died, and I was very grateful that he was ever born. And as my mummy said, there's a time to be born and there's a time to die.
And he's in heaven and he's looking down on us. I had to bring her because this is her first ever encounter with grief, so she's never known anyone.
The police investigation into Joel's death is now focusing on a possible feud between rival gangs. Some neighbours suggested his older brother Sam may have been the intended target. No one from the family was available to comment today. When Tien Nagin put CCTV cameras in the window of his flat, it was to stop local children throwing balls against his windows. But one of the cameras overlooks the street. Detectives are hoping his footage might have captured something or someone to give them a breakthrough. Local councillors who also left flowers echoed police appeals for more help from residents.
We need to find these people. We need as much information as possible. So if anyone's got any evidence, we'd urge them to get in touch with the police.
Do you worry that people might not be willing to come forward?
We're calling on people to get in touch with the police. We've got an innocent boy who's been killed here.
Throughout the day, police forensic science teams searched the charred rooms inside the family home. No London borough, it seems, is immune from the curse of gang rivalry, often linked to drugs. In the last week, we've seen violent deaths in Southwark, Kingston upon Thames and now Lewisham.
Get back from the door!
As if any reminder was needed that London is in the grip of a violent crime epidemic, a few streets from where Joel died, police raided homes in an operation not connected to his death.
We've made 14 arrests. At every address we've searched, we've found drugs. We've recovered large quantities of Class A drugs and also Class B drugs, as well as cash and a suspected firearm.
This has become an all too familiar scene on London's streets, a shrine to somebody murdered. Sleep tight with the angels was one of the messages left today for Joel Urey. Simon Harris, ITV News, Deptford. Good evening. If Boris Johnson was trying to stoke up controversy when writing about the burqa in a newspaper column this week, then the former London mayor has certainly succeeded. Today, the Tories announced he faces a disciplinary investigation for likening women who wear the garment to letterboxes and bank robbers. The commissioner of the Met Police said she's even considered whether he had committed a hate crime, while 100 Muslim women signed a letter demanding he be sacked. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has the day's developments.
Mr. Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson hasn't been seen in public since his resignation statement to MPs 3 weeks ago. He's abroad on holiday, but the fallout from his recent remarks about burqas took another twist today. Sidra Sajjad is one of around 100 Muslim women who signed a letter demanding the Tory party take action.
I was shocked that a member of Parliament, a public voice, such a vocal voice, could come out with such derogatory comments as saying they look like letterboxes and we look like bank robbers.
The Uxbridge MP and former London mayor will now be investigated to see if he broke the Conservative Party's code of conduct. If the investigating officer decides there's a case to answer, the complaint will be referred to an independent panel, which could recommend suspension or even expulsion from the Conservative Party. London's Police Commissioner, Cressida Dick, says the Met looked at Mr Johnson's comments to see if he was guilty of hate crime. but senior officers concluded he wasn't.
Although we have not yet received any allegation of such a crime, I can tell you that my preliminary view, having spoken to them, is that what Mr Johnson said would not reach the bar for a criminal offence. He did not commit a criminal offence.
When Boris Johnson first ran for mayor 10 years ago, he knew he would only win if he appealed to Londoners who weren't traditional Conservative voters. Ridiculing women in burqas or face veils would have been political suicide.
Boris used to have an excellent reputation as a very multicultural, very liberal guy, and this, I think, will have shot it to pieces.
For London Tories hoping to evict Sadiq Khan from City Hall in 2020, there's a real fear that the man who was once their saviour might have damaged their chances.
Well, Simon, so how serious is all this for Boris Johnson?
Well, it is serious because Boris Johnson, as far as we know, hasn't abandoned his ambition to be leader of the Conservative Party or one day Prime Minister. And clearly breaking the party's code of conduct doesn't exactly enhance your CV. But it's a big leap to make from the complaints against him automatically triggering an investigation into him actually being found guilty. And frankly, if he was suspended or expelled, it would probably cause open revolt within the Conservative Party, with those who support him crying foul. And some sources have suggested it's unlikely that those sanctions would be made against him. But of course, all this has to be seen in the context of the wider Brexit row, which is tearing the Tory party apart. Those leavers will accuse Remainers of orchestrating the moves against Mr Johnson to weaken his position. And another thing that some Tories have questioned tonight is the Met's role in this, asking what on earth is Scotland Yard doing, considering whether the ex-mayor has committed a hate crime in an opinion in a newspaper article.
Simon, it all rumbles on, doesn't it? Thank you.